Hello and welcome. It's Helen Vandenberg here with my amazing guest today is Andre Fennell. Hi Andre, how are you doing?
Hi, Hales. I'm
So
good.
Andre is the best-selling author of a couple of books, Ready to Rise, but I particularly wanted to, the thing that I'm interested in is her work around authenticity. So she's the author of Behind the Mask, which is all about how individuals and organizations can become more authentic, more real, and get better results. So today's session is called The New Normal, why authenticity in the workplace matters now. Because whenever you're listening to this, if it's any time post-COVID, the start of COVID, things have definitely changed in the workplace. And there's no one better that I can think to talk to about this than Andre around organizational culture, that sort of dance of being a leader, but also being sensitive to your people's needs, and then helping people through these challenging times when there's so much uncertainty. So, Andre, tell us a little bit about, your take on with the new normal being that things are uncertain, many people are remote working, but there's people are concerned about the impact of their business, the impact of their work on their home lives, all that stuff. Why is authenticity and authentic leadership really important right now?
Okay. So I think I'd just like to start by saying that I spent 20 plus years as an HR and training manager in fast moving environments in corporate world. And in the last 18 years with my business Aspiring Future Competence, I've been working with different sector companies, public, not-for-profit and private sector companies all over the UK, Ireland, Scotland, and leadership. So leadership in essence for all the years I've been in business is critical, that you have leaders that understand their people, who are engaging, inspiring, and are able to develop their people. But going on to the question you just posed for me, because I recognise when I was an HR manager, the stress, that we were all under in those days. The new norm has reflected the fact that there is a massive need for managers to lead and manage in a very, very different way. And authentic leadership is about the leaders being able to firstly manage virtually, which has been a real challenge for a lot of companies, because we're not used to it. So you can't walk down the corridor and say, "Hey Tom, how are you?" "Oh, you don't look too good," because you're not physically seeing them. So the new norm going forward, there is a requirement for leaders to have a slightly different set of skills, or the leaders that have the ability to lead authentically are streaks ahead of everybody else.
So let's talk about some of those differences when organizations are, people are having to work differently, or maybe they're confronting the challenge of getting people back into the workplace, and encouraging them to come back into their office and dealing with their fear and that. So for our leaders, and when we say leaders, it's not just top execs, is it?
No.
It is like almost everyone in the organization is a leader in some way, because you might have a team you manage, or you might just be, you're no longer the newest person in the team, and other people will be watching you. Even if you've only been there 6 months ahead of someone else, you will be perceived as someone who knows more than the new person. So you've got that leadership theme going across. But what are some of the challenges that leaders are facing with this combination of remote working, trying to train people and upskill them when you can't get them into a classroom, encouraging people back into the office if that's appropriate? Tell me some about that, some of the challenges that our leaders will be facing.
Well, having sort of had lots of discussions with HR managers that are known to me as clients, and I've been doing a lot of work on LinkedIn, having discussions with L&D people, HR people, and what I'm being fed back is, like you just said, the first challenge is dealing with the furlough. So are they coming out furlough? Are they, you know, because the laws change, so are they coming out furlough 2 days a week or completely out furlough? Are we downsizing? Because I keep being told that we're restructuring, we're downsizing. So there are some companies that have done well out of the lockdown. You know, they're busier now than they've ever been. The issue there what we have is that the leaders or managers that are in place are snowed under, so they are stressed. On the reverse of that, I'm being told we're downsizing, we're laying people off. So therefore, there's stress from that point of view. But my concern also is about the people who are left behind, who are there, you know, the skeleton staff.
Yes.
There's going to be even more pressure on those leaders and managers who are left in place. So in terms of the new norm, it's, you know, there's things like recognizing mental health issues, recognizing it in yourself, because I don't think people realize that they're stressed. I know I didn't when I was an HR and training manager looking after 800 people. My God, it was other people saying, "Where's Andre gone? What do you mean I'm here?" No, you're not. You have lost your mojo. And I was constantly ill, you know, nearly ended up divorced. It was horrendous. And when I look back now, I recognize why, because I actually wasn't being authentic myself. I was trying to live up to the company or others' expectations, or so I perceived. And so I think initially there's two things here. The first thing is that the leaders who are in place possibly haven't been they haven't been given the tools to be able to manage in this new norm, and that's what I'm talking about today. And so they are stressed and maybe don't recognize that stress in terms of the signs, the symptoms, how it's affecting them, their physiology, how it's affecting their mental state. So the first thing is being able to understand mental health. Now, a lot of my clients and a lot of people I've been talking to have told me that they are doing mental health awareness training so that those managers can recognize the signs and symptoms in them and their teams. So it's mental health and well-being is an issue. The second issue is the skills. It's a slightly different, well, yes, it's a slightly different set of skills, because you've got to be able to manage from a distance, which is really hard to do, because people put on a mask, which is the title of my book. Here we go, Behind the Mask. So people put on a mask, so they become an imposter. So they're trying to be something they're not, which then causes distress, anxiety, illness, depression, and so on. So, but they also need to have slightly different set of skills. They need to be far more empathetic. They need to learn new ways of communicating. Engagement is a big, big one, because I think people are saying, I haven't got that social interaction. I haven't, you know, I'm seeing people on a screen all day long. I'm stuck in my house. So there's something around making them feel, so inclusion and engagement. How do you do that? So there's like, and I believe a lot of companies still to this day do once a year appraisals, twice a year if you are lucky. And one of the other things I think is making sure that that communication process is ongoing, that there is, you're asking people, how are you feeling today? So I know this from a number of people, and I think my son works for the civil service. One of the things that they do, a lot of I think it's once a week, they have a tell me how you're feeling, you know, and it's about creating that open, honest, authentic culture that people feel safe within, so they are able to be, you know what, I'm not feeling too good, I feel stressed, I feel anxious. And so the manager then has the you know, they can't necessarily deal with it themselves because they're not qualified to do so, but being able to then pass that information to occupational health or HR, being able to identify that. So a different set of skills. Mm.
So I think something that just occurred to me was also the issue of, like you said, people being on Zoom or WebEx or another platform, you know, Microsoft Teams. So people, I find that if they're not used to presenting on, you know, all day, it is like being on camera all day. And
Yeah.
you know, they've got this. You talk a lot about people's sort of clash of values, that, you know, they might have one value of they need to support their partner who's home working as well in the other room, or also doing childcare, and they have a high, you know, massive value around that. But they also have a value of being a professional, employee or leader in their company. And sometimes those values are going to clash, and that's where we get this conflict and this worry of, well, you know, this job is now impeding on my personal home. You know, as someone said to me the other day, it's not that I'm now working from home, it's that I never leave the office. It's that feeling of actually work is now always here. And I think for organizations to be able to manage that, and then I suppose, what are some of the things they can do to help their people thrive? So you talked about wellness awareness, and figuring out how to communicate. What other things, you know, perhaps with people such as yourselves or external consultants, because again, budgets are often tight, so they may not have the internal capacity to have a full-time resource on this, but they could maybe pull someone in to train an entire group of people. So what are some of the things organizations can do to help get more in alignment, so as their people, their leaders, and the organization's values are somewhere crossing over?
Well, I suppose one of the starting points is that they have a set of values in the first place. And there's a lot of companies that don't, so they haven't got they haven't got a mission statement, they haven't got an organizational set of values. So that's a starting point. And as a coach and a trainer, and a consultant, that's one of the things in the past I've done a lot of. I've gone in and helped the company devise their mission statement, strategy, their core values, and not only say, well, okay, there's a list of 8 values, but what do they mean in terms of the behaviours that would be displayed in the workplace if that value was being lived and met? So understanding the core values. One of the other things I would say is, I've been working with a new client in the last few weeks doing some virtual delivery, and they have just redesigned, prior to lockdown, they just redesigned their performance management system. And they've gone from having anonymous feedback just online, so you don't know who's sent it, who it was aimed at really. And they've gone to a very open culture. Well, that's a massive shift change for everybody. So they've introduced this system where it's an ongoing, this is where I'm coming from, that not an appraisal once a year, twice a year, if you're lucky, and if your manager's not looking at their watch saying, oh, well, we've only got 40 minutes, so, you know, it's tick box exercise, let's get on with it. This is about making sure that you touch base with your employees personally, that you're giving ongoing feedback, so they know how they're doing. They know you can have a conversation that's not just about, oh, have you achieved your objectives this week? This is about, how are you feeling? How are you finding homeschooling? And, you know, all, like you said, it's like, you know, they're being, they must feel like they're trying to run through treacle. It's really different way of working. And even my colleagues are all saying, I am so stressed because I'm trying to run a professional business, work from home. I've got calls coming in constantly. I'm in meetings constantly. You know, the child is screaming, wants being fed. The dog needs walking. So this is a whole new way of working. And I know companies will start to, what I'm getting feedback on is that companies are starting to maybe have a phased return to work gradually, so that not everybody is in the office at once. But I would say ongoing discussions, you know, coaching your people, having more of a personal contact, not just a, you know, objectives corporate contact, but it needs to start from the top down or the bottom up. So it has to go, you know, I started the the giving and receiving feedback course was the virtual course, and I started with the partners, the CEO, and the whole senior leadership team, because they have to commit to this. In order to change a culture, everybody needs to buy into it, but first and foremost, they need to decide what that open culture, the authentic culture, needs to look like.
Yeah.
But people understand what it means and what's expected of them. Yeah.
Now, I'm fascinated when you talk about having to switch to, I know you've done virtual training for many years, but this is very new for a lot of people, and I've definitely seen some things where it's just somebody, it's like what we used to say in training, the classroom, death by PowerPoint. So what are the ways that you and your team work to make some of these virtual, whether it's a coaching session or whether it's a group training or facilitation, what are some of the things that you do that, again, help it make it interactive, more dynamic, and also more of a connection, more empathic to the people that you're in front of, so as it doesn't just become click, 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 learn this stuff?
No, I mean, you know, even when I'm training face to face, the PowerPoint is there, not death by PowerPoint. It's there as an aid. It's a visual. Some people like visual, so you've got audible people, you've got visual people. So in the same way with virtual training, I use the PowerPoint as a support, but it's there as a visual, so they don't necessarily want to spend an hour and a half, 2 hours, just me talking at them through Zoom or Microsoft Teams. And I would say engagement, so interactivity. So the first thing to give them to do is either a scenario, a role play, or a discussion document where you send them off and they have to interact with one another. You set them some tasks or some questions to answer. They come back and then we have a discussion as a group. So they feed back. So that then generates interactivity. And if you've got something at the start of the session, that will then generate discussion all the way through, because you can keep, when you're talking about models and when you're giving them some theory, you can relate that theory back into the activities that you've done. Obviously, you can't do it necessarily. I mean, you can still do team building, but obviously they can't build a tower out of a newspaper that you would in a face-to-face. But you can still give them some problem-solving things to do, whatever this depends on the subject. But they can still do giving feedback. They can still do communication skills. There's lots of stuff you can still do, even though they're in different areas of the country or in different countries.
Yeah,
that's the other issue. But you know, the feedback that I've had has been phenomenal, and the feedback I've had in the past is it's engaging, it's interactive. One lady last week said to me on email, she said, I honestly didn't realise how interesting, engaging and interactive a virtual training session could be.
That's amazing.
You know,
and, you know, in my previous company, we, you know, delivered training in person and all over the world, and we assessed a lot of training for companies. And let me tell you guys, this is not the norm. Having people who not only can deliver in an engaging and impactful way in person, but being able to translate that into a virtual environment is very different. And I think what's nice about this is you're then role modeling for those delegates how things they might do in maybe their own team meetings. So just to wrap up today, so why do you think, what do you think are the sort of 3 top skills that leaders need now to, you know, to be authentic, to connect and lead their teams powerfully in these uncertain times?
I would say I've got 4 here. Is that all
Go
right?
on, yeah, we'll have a Brucey bonus one. I like that.
A bonus. They need to be self-aware, so some emotional intelligence. That's the first thing. They need to know their own strengths and limitations and values. So knowing your own core values is really important, because then you can understand how it aligns with the business organizational values and the values of the individuals that you are managing or working alongside. The second one is about transparency, and that's about being honest and straightforward. Now, that's not being direct and nitpicking or rude. That's about being honest, but constructively honest. So that's about giving feedback. And with feedback, it's about telling them, you know, what the behaviour was, what the impact of that action was,
Mm-hmm.
and what they need to do differently. So that's getting them to identify a development need. So transparency. The next one is being fair-minded. Because if people feel they're being treated fairly, they're being listened to, they're being valued, they will give you the earth. Yeah, they'll walk 1,000 miles for you because they feel like, as I say, they feel valued. And if you're feeling listened to and you're not being treated as a number, then they will perform for you. So the most effective managers are those who are authentic and have emotional intelligence. So that's fair-mindedness. And the last one is that they have a strong set of values and moral perspectives, because the values drive the person to do the right thing, not to do things right. That's what a manager does.
Mm-hmm.
But a leader makes sure that the values help you do the right thing. So those four are self-awareness, transparency, fair-mindedness, and that's not being like a pushover. That's not being a laissez-faire leader. That's just being fair and consistent. That's the other thing I come across. Inconsistency in practice. So you treat one person in one way as opposed to treating some, you know, that's victimization. That's unfair. So consistent practice. So fair-mindedness, and the last one is strong values and moral perspectives. And in amongst that, we need to squeeze the word empathy in. They need to be empathetic and authentic to the core.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'd love to do another interview with you another time around perhaps difficult people, because what occurred to me was that many of us will see, if you're leading people, it's the thing that, well, I know I'm self-aware and I know that, you know, I'm trying to do my best to my manager, but if those people would only or that person is being so difficult because, and I think often when you can get into that cycle, particularly if you've got a lack of communication because of the way we're working remotely and all those little touch points have gone, that actually seeing that the power is in you as an individual, becoming stronger and being able to step back, but also like, how do you manage when someone is, exhibiting challenging behaviours, but you're not managing them in person? Yeah. So we'll save that for another day. I'm sure.
Well, you're saying that, yeah, we'll save it for another day. But I do run courses on managing difficult people or dealing with difficult people.
Mm.
Here's an end to this. Yeah, there's no such thing as a difficult person. It's how you deal with it and your perception of the situation.
So that's, you're just labeling it, aren't you? But we've all been there when you just think, why do they do that? And I think that's really tough when you are managing. It's more impactful when you're managing virtually, because the chasm between the behaviour and dealing with it and supporting them can be so much greater. Well, Andrea, that's been absolutely amazing. So if people want to learn more about your work or find out how to get in touch with you, where's the best place for them to go?
If you go onto my Aspiring Future Competence website, that's www.afcconsultants.co.uk.
Brilliant.
You can find me on there, fill in the contact form, or give me a call.
Fantastic. And like me, you have a fairly unusual surname and name, so just Google her, she'll come up, because she is a best-selling author. You can find her on LinkedIn, you can find her on Facebook, and if all else fails, come to me and I will put you in touch. So guys, thank you so much, Andrea. It's been brilliant. So again, it's AFC consultants.co.uk. afcconsultants.co.uk. Great. And this is Helen Vandenberg from writeyourbooks.biz, and we'll see you again soon. Bye for now.
Bye for now.